We saw some signs from the Braves offense on Thursday, but do they need to change their approach going forward? I'll answer that question and others on the trade deadline. How much money does AA actually have to work with? We'll answer all those questions on today's Mailbag episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Make sure you follow the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any questions, comments, or feedback that you have for the podcast. Always enjoy hearing from you. In today's episode will be built by you as I answer all of your questions on this Mailbag episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. We're almost at 10.5K on there. Hit that thumbs up button as well so others will find us here at Locked On Braves. You're listening on the audio version. You can leave me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to Locked On Braves. And thank you so much for your support here. It really does mean the world to me. Absolutely love the group we've created here at Locked On Braves. We got DJ Brave Thrills, Bolt 66, Ecuadorian, CJ Palmer, David Agenius, William the Worst, and Adam Dodd in here with me live as we record this Friday Mailbag episode, but late on Thursday night if you're here with me live. So thank you so much for joining. Before we get into all the questions, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Now, the Braves do get a 6-3 win over the Orioles on Thursday afternoon to avoid getting swept there. I'm not going to go into much detail at all on that game other than, hey, they won. And that is something we haven't gotten to say for a little bit now, more than we're used to. You want to hear my thoughts on that win and Graham McCauley's, you can check that out on Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube or in your Locked On Braves podcast feed, where you also get this show as well. But a good win by the Braves. Certainly, I thought it was the best start of the year for Ronaldo Lopez, really mixing in that changeup and curveball more to get out those left-handed hitters. So I was very impressed by him. Offense, scoring early, often, and throughout. Adding late after the Orioles made things a little close. Able to add on in that ninth inning as well to get the 6-3 win. So great win all around. I love to see that from this Braves team. Hopefully get more of that going forward as they go back home. We'll talk about coming back home. We'll talk about that Rays series in the final segment. But as always, on the Mailbag episode, I'll be answering all of your questions. We got almost 20 questions to get to, and these are a wide range of questions as they typically are. I'll try to keep an eye on the comment section too if we have some other questions pop in there. But let's get things started. This one from Braves Battalion says, we need a right fielder. Who do you think AA should trade for who can get on base and may bring some power but won't cost us our top prospect? That's a big ask to get all of those things and somebody that's not going to cost you your top prospect. Now, just quickly looking at what's out there right now and who are some of the top on-base outfielders that could be available. You know, somebody that might be cheap is Jesse Winker from the Nationals. Somebody that's, would be cheap in terms of money and what you would have to give up to get him. He has 6 home runs this year, but a 374 on-base percentage and 11 stolen bases as well. Especially against right-handed hitters, he could be that left-handed complement that you're looking for, maybe to platoon with Duvall and somebody that's shown a little bit of power, good bit of speed that you don't often think of with Jesse Winker. We saw it in the series with the Braves and a 374 on-base percentage this year. So that would definitely fit that. As I just kind of move down this list here, I just have it sorted by on-base percentage right now. Gavin Sheets is one that I've talked about from the White Sox. Don't necessarily want to see him in the outfield defensively, but a 346 on base this year to go with 7 home runs doesn't give you any speed at all, though. Some other names that stood out to me are Starling Marte from the Mets. If you can do a deal with the Mets, he's somebody that does give you a little bit of pop and some speed, and a 337 on base so far this year. And then one more that I'm looking at in just top 25 on base for outfielders right now is Taylor Ward, a name that's been brought up a lot. Those are just a couple of names. Again, just looking down this list, we'll see who all becomes available. Obviously, Luis Robert is the one that you want, that everybody wants. But if you're talking about not having to give up your top prospects, That's not going to happen. You're going to have to give up at least one of Waldrop, AJ Smith-Shawver, Spencer Schwellenbach. By the way, I posted a tweet post, whatever you want to call it, on X right before we recorded. Who would you rather give up in a big trade line deal? Would you rather trade AJ Smith-Shawver, Hurston Waldrop, or Spencer Schwellenbach to get that big outfield bat at the deadline? Let me know which one you would prefer to trade out of those three. But moving on in our questions here, Dustin Mounts, Kelenic versus Duvall. If you had to see one out there every day and one is a backup, who would you choose and why if new right field is traded for? Kelenic at-bats to me seem better overall. I think the stats versus lefties have been close to the same, but what have you seen? Yeah, I've been pretty vocal about this lately. Kelenic for me needs to play every day. Righties, lefties, he needs to play every day. I think he's earned that. I think the at-bats, even when he hasn't gotten hits here lately, he hasn't gotten on base, even in some at-bats here lately where he struck out, it feels like he still goes deep into the count. So Kelenic needs to play every day for me. Again, since Ronald's gone down, he's gotten that opportunity. I feel like he's giving you some of the best at-bats. He's been your third or fourth best hitter over that span since Acuna went down. And maybe that's not saying much with the way everybody else has been struggling. But for me, Kelenic needs to play every day. Duvall needs to play only against lefties. He's had some reverse splits in his career, but this year in particular, I believe all his home runs have come off left-handed pitchers. He had a couple of hits on Thursday against a lefty. For me, Duvall needs to be the platoon partner going forward. He only needs to be in there against left-handed bats. I want to see them get a left-handed bat up there to start the strong side of the platoon with Duvall. But for me, Kelenic plays every day right now. Righty, lefty, I don't care. Ride him, while he's got the momentum. And again, the at-bats just look better for him than just about everybody else in the lineup, sans Ozuna and Olsen. David Docher says, what are your thoughts on Ezekiel Tovar and Mason Wynn? Could they be trade targets? Love both of them. No. Why are the Cardinals going to trade their young future shortstop? Why are the Rockies going to trade their young future shortstop? I'll tell you, I love Ezekiel Tovar. The defense from him, at least last year, I know this year, maybe at least stats-wise, it's been a little bit down, but I love his glove. A little bit of a rhyme there on a late Thursday night. The bats come around this year. How much is that as a Coors effect? I don't know that the bat ever reaches all-star level, but I'm a defensive first guy anyway, so I would love to have Tovar because of the glove, and Wynn's really good defensively as well. But I just don't see any reason why the Cardinals or the Rockies would trade those guys. Dion Rodriguez, new listener, but have listened since the start of the year. Been a Braves fan since 74. People need to know that we've been through a lot worse, especially in the 70s and 80s. We'll be fine in time. Also a rhyme there. Everybody's rhyming tonight. But yes, Dion, thank you for that. Again, it's been a rough stretch here for the Braves. It's gone on longer than it needs to. I'm not here to tell you that it's not legitimate. The concerns aren't legitimate at this point, 2 months into this tough stretch for the offense where they've been one of the worst offenses in baseball. There's just no reason for that. But yeah, we've seen tough times in the past. It's certainly for a team that's 6 games over 500, things could be a lot worse. Tim Finley says, will Alex Anthopoulos have any money from a practical standpoint at the trade deadline? That's what we don't know. We're all kind of speculating. I'm speculating that if he doesn't want to go into that third tax threshold, which penalties go up, the surcharge goes up pretty significantly, you lose 10 spots in your draft pick next year. If the Braves want to avoid that, then there's not a lot of money. There's maybe somewhere from 5 to 10 million to spend, depending on which website you look at. But I typically go to Ross Reese's sources on Fangraphs, and I think they're about 7 million away last time I looked from reaching that third tax threshold. So if that's the case, there's not a lot of wiggle room. It doesn't give you the ability to really do too much at the trade deadline if you're taking on really any significant amount of money. So if that is the case, then there's not a lot of room to work with for Alex Anthopoulos. We don't know that. We're all just kind of speculating. So until he kind of goes over that and shows that there are no limits, then I think we do have to kind of work under the guidelines that there's just not a lot of money to spend as we get closer to the trade deadline. But again, that's all just speculation. Nobody knows. I would think that if there was a move to be made that Alex thought would make this team better, they wouldn't let that stand in the way. This is a window, an opportunity to win a World Series with this group. I don't think they would let that stand in the way. But who knows? Again, that's all just speculation from everybody at this point. All right, we got a lot more questions to get to. We got more people rolling in here with us live. Next, we'll talk about the approach from the lineup, something we've been discussing a lot this week on the podcast. Do they need to change things up? Do they need to go away from the all pull, all power approach and maybe play a little bit small ball here and there? We'll discuss that here next. Here on Locked On Braves, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year-round here at Locked On Braves. You know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved its clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. See the link in the episode description below for more info. All right, you want sports on your TV all day in the background while you work? If you haven't already, I've been telling you about it for a while. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed just for you, bringing you the biggest stories each and every day. You can find it on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're wrapping up our final podcast of the week, as we always do with our mailbag episode, but we'll be back next week. Miners Monday once again. We'll have our mock trade episode coming up, another MLB draft prep episode around the league, and then another mailbag, all on another full week of podcast next week. Then I'm going to have a little bit of hiatus, taking a little trip to the beach, but next week should be a full week for you here at Locked On Braves. Let's jump back into the questions, though. Another one coming from Caden Hurd said, could the Braves get Tanner, Scott, and Luzardo? I want to say no. You throw Luzardo in this deal, and suddenly it becomes a situation where you are probably going to have to give up one of your top prospects, and just bigger deals like that, it seems like they're less likely to get done during the season or get done in division like that. Maybe you could pull off a move for a Tanner Scott, but to do Scott and Luzardo, I think the price goes up pretty significantly, because you're talking about a young pitcher in Luzardo that has some cheap control left. That's going to be a pretty big asking price. So I don't think you get both. Maybe you could do Scott, but not both. And even Luzardo on his own, I think could be a tough ask for the Braves and the Marlins. Chris says, currently watching the Braves and O's game 3, and the small ball I'm seeing is encouraging with the Braves up 4-0. Do you think this may be a sign of things changing, or just a one-off against a very good O's team? For now, you got to consider it a one-off. And even in the game on Thursday, as great as it was, they left a lot of runners on base. They struck out 10 times against a guy that doesn't strike out anybody. I know it was a season high in strikeouts for Cole Irvin. I don't know if it was a career high for him, but still just too many strikeouts. Now, they did rack up the hits, 12 hits. That's great to see. They were aggressive early in counts, and when they didn't get their pitch early in counts, remember they missed it. I thought they did a good job of battling and at least working the count, deeper, even to a full count, making them throw some pitches. So I thought the at-bats overall were better. I wouldn't say that I saw a drastic change or approach in anything in what the Braves did on Thursday. And again, still a lot of swings and misses, still a lot of strikeouts. Impat says, do you think the offensive numbers from 2023 are somewhat of a fluke, and have the players come down to earth, and we've already seen most of their ceilings? I've seen this theory floating out there and not sure myself. Wanted to get your thoughts. Is 2023 a fluke? No. Was it a historic year? Yes. Is it likely that they, as a team, collectively produce those numbers again? No. Is it likely that some of those guys who had career years produce those results again? No, but it's not like those guys didn't have the talent and ability to complete that. You knew there was some regression coming, but for everybody to regress like this, look, nobody wants to hear it. The game has changed. The game's changed this year, and baseball's for the most part, offense for the most part is down, or it is down across the league significantly. And if the baseballs are not flying as far, it takes away the one thing that made this offense great, that made this offense better than all the rest. I know people are going to say, what about the Yankees? What about the Orioles? You know, the Yankees have some very strong guys in their lineup that just, it doesn't matter if the baseballs are dead at all. Aaron Judge is still going to hit 450-foot blasts. Same for Giancarlo Stanton, and they play in a smaller ballpark. The baseballs are not traveling as far. And it's a team that's built on slug. It's a team that's built on home runs. And that, to a degree, has been taken away from them for the most part. I mean, the Rays are still middle of the pack in baseball and home runs. It's not like they're not hitting any. And they've also played a lot fewer games than many of the teams in front of them. I think they're still going to be a top 10 team in home runs when things are all said and done. Maybe even not far off of that now. Again, once they catch up with some of these other teams in games played. These guys are still mid-20s, mid to late 20s. They're in their primes. It's just hard for me to believe, to see that they're declining. Could it have been the ceiling year for Matt Olson? Yes. I don't know that we'll see him hit for that type of average. We may not see 50-plus home runs from him again, especially if these baseballs continue like they are. I still think there's more in the tank for Michael Harris. I still think there's more in the tank for Austin Riley. I know that's hard to believe right now with the way that he's swinging the bat. But it was not a fluke. The Braves were playing to the environment that they were in, and it certainly helped them. And this year it's not. So I hope that was a good answer for you, Impact. I wasn't trying to dodge that or kind of beat around the bush or anything, but it wasn't a fluke. I think the way the things have changed this year is that it has certainly hurt what made them such a great offense last year. It's no excuse for being as bad as they have been, but things have changed. Mac McGuire, everyday listener here. You do a great job, Jake. I know Wall has cooled off, but why not bring him up to lead off against lefties? He has speed, and he's been raking at AAA. He should be starting against righties. Forrest Wall is a left-handed hitter, but I don't know why you don't bring him up and at least make him a platoon partner with Adam Duvall, like I kind of talked about earlier. For me, Kelenic plays every day, but Duvall, I would still look for a platoon partner for him. So I'm all for bringing up Forrest Wall, which he's had a pretty good week this week at Gwinnett. I'm all for bringing him up and using him as a platoon partner with Adam Duvall in right field. I think that would be a great addition. Get somebody else with some speed in that lineup. I've talked about the fact that if the home runs aren't coming, then we need to see more athleticism in this lineup to be able to steal a base, to score from first. Need to see more of that. So I'm all for bringing up Forrest Wall and giving him some run in the outfield, at least in a platoon situation with Duvall. Dustin Mounts, do you see the performance of the offense affecting the Braves draft strategy at all with the way Braves usually draft pitching heavy to try and get better position players in the system? Or do you think they continue to draft heavy pitching due to the volatility of the position? I think they continue to draft pitching because of the volatility of the position. You need as many arms as possible. You're seeing it this year. You've seen it in the past with the Braves. You just never know when you're going to lose an arm. And look at it right now. J.R. Ritchie out last year. Owen Murphy out this year. Blake Berthalter, after they drafted him, has been out. Spencer Schwellenbach was out. You never know when you're going to lose some of these arms, and you got to continue to draft and develop these guys so that you're ready. And look at what's going to happen after this year. You're possibly losing Max Fried. You're possibly losing Charlie Morton. And potentially they have some replacements for them. And A.J. Smith-Shawver, Hurston Waldrop, and Spencer Schwellenbach. You just have to continue to churn out these arms. Look at Ian Anderson and Michael Soroka, two guys we thought would be fixtures in this rotation going forward. Soroka, his wasn't even arm, although he does have some shoulder issues as well. And Ian Anderson, out for several years now. It's just, you never know the lifespan of these starting pitchers. So you have to continue to draft and develop those, because pitching is what everybody needs. And, even if maybe you have a set rotation, look at the trades the Braves have been able to make, even with the farm system that they have. That's one of the worst in baseball. It's because they still have all of these arms and these depth of arms that they can trade from in order to make significant moves. So I think they stick with the plan of drafting pitchers. Dion Rodriguez, why don't we play more small ball by trying to get runners over? I know it's not Snit's style, but like you said, we need to try something different. And this is kind of where I've been going back and forth on things this week. Is this team is just not built for that. That's not the team that Brian Snitker, Alex Anthopoulos in particular built. He built a team that makes consistently hard contact. He built a team that is built on hitting home runs, because that's what the environment has been for years. You hit the ball the hardest, you hit the most home runs, you score the most runs. That's the way the game has been for years now. But with the shift going away, with the emphasis on steals now, it feels like the game is starting to change a little bit. And especially with the dead end baseballs this year, it feels like the new thing going forward is a priority on making contact, any type of contact. Obviously, I still think you want to make hard contact, an emphasis on players up and down the lineup who have speed. And it feels like it has an all fields approach. The Braves are first in the league in pull percentage. You know what? They had that same pull rate last year, but baseballs are flying out of the ballpark. And when that's happening, you want to pull the baseball. But again, it just feels like there's been this shift in how the game is played, and it's turning more towards contact-oriented players who can spray all over the field and who have athleticism that can steal bases. That feels like where things are going. And if that's the case, then maybe the Braves do have to switch things up a little bit more to play to that. And again, the lineup they have now just isn't built for that. There's a big logjam in the middle. And once you get to Ozuna, Olsen, Riley, your catcher, Duvall, those are all logjam players. Now, Riley and Duvall, they all can run a little bit, but they're not stealing bases for you. And even RC at the bottom, I mean, he's one of the slowest people on earth. This lineup's just not built for that. And so, again, I don't know how you can just change that on a dime, especially in the middle of a season. I do think there needs to be some approach change, whatever you want to call it, inside of an at-bat. I don't think you can have just an all-pull approach. There needs to be more of a two-strike emphasis, whereas last year, you just took your A-stroke every swing, and, if you got to 2 strikes, so be it. If you get your A-swing off on that strike 3 pitch, maybe you drive it out of the park. But with home runs down, I think you have to change that up a little bit, and you have to look to just make that contact with 2 strikes, try to shoot a ball the other way, and just get on base. I think that needs to change more than anything for this Braves team. It can't just be an all pull, all power approach. It's got to be a little bit of both. So if there's something that I would change for this Braves offense, that would be it. And again, how easy is that to do for this group that was not built to do that? I don't know. And that's the question that we're going to have to figure out as things go on. LeBronathan Cranthony Jr., how much longer would this streak of poor play need to continue for you to consider the Braves sellers at the deadline? Braves aren't selling at the deadline. With all the wild card spots, it's just hard for me to believe this team would not be in pretty good position come the trade deadline. And I still feel somewhat confident that they're going to turn things around offensively and be better there. You just need a league average offense at this point. Just stop being the worst offense in baseball, and this team will take off with the pitching the way that's been. So, look, if they play this bad and they drop to 5 games under 500 come the trade deadline, then maybe who are you selling? Maybe Max Fried. I don't really know who else you're selling. Maybe some of your arms, maybe some of your bullpen guys. I don't really know who else you're selling. This is your group for the long haul. Paraz says, I like the way the Braves attack today. I've seen numerous times where we watch a fastball right down the middle and swing it off speed way out of the zone. Do you think Seitzer has a new approach? I'm not going to base it off one game, but again, we'll see. I talked about it. I think there does need to be an approach change within the at-bat, and it's all dictated on how you're pitching, and it can't just be a pull-heavy approach every single pitch. Drew Wade says, controversial idea. What do you think about giving Trevor Bauer a shot if he's looking close to his past self? Anger issues would need to be in check, but could be a decent addition at a minimum salary. They're not signing Trevor Bauer. Haven't had this come up in a while, but they're not signing Trevor Bauer. No team is. Faraz says, good evening, Jake. What do you think the biggest need is? A fifth starter or an impact bat? I have hopes of the Braves hitting back to normal, but that fifth rotation spot has been dreadful. I think the bat is needed. I believe they're going to get some sort of outfield bat. It may not be of high impact, but at least a lefty platoon partner. And I think they're going to get a back the rotation starter at the deadline. I don't think it's going to be anything significant, but I think they get both of those things come the trade deadline. But what I think is more needed is the impact bat at this point. And then last one from Colton Chalker says, do you think an ejection of Brian Snitker or a player could ignite a turnaround for the Braves? I mean, I've talked about this before. How legitimate is getting thrown out? How is that really going to change things on the field? I don't know. But again, as I said, I believe on the Monday podcast earlier this week, try something to get this team going. I mean, in the way that some of the calls have been this season for the Braves, and Brian Snitker hasn't even barked at anybody that I've seen, do something. Again, I don't necessarily believe it's going to change much of anything on the field, but I wouldn't mind seeing it. They talked about on the broadcast today just how even killed Brian Snitker is. He's not going to yell. He's not going to get ejected. But, I'm mad as a fan. I would love to see my manager get mad too and maybe get ejected every now and then. But I think it has very little effect on what actually happens on the field or gets players going. All right, we'll take another break and then we'll come back and preview the Rays series where, again, it's an opportunity for the Braves to get a series win at home. We'll see if they can get it done, but we'll preview all that here next. Take stress out of buying your next tickets to your next big event with Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. And you know what? Everyday listener Chris Mofield, he has some peace of mind right now because he reached out to me and said, hey, Jake, what is that great promo code you have out there for Game Time, the app where you buy tickets to your sporting events or whatever events? And so I let him know, use that code, Locked On MLB. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. So Chris is benefiting from that now as he gets ready for his next big event. And you can too. All you got to do, use that promo code, Locked On MLB. You're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Couple of things I love about the Game Time app, all in prices up front. You know what you're paying, no guesswork as you get to the checkout screen and those inflated prices jump up on you. You see it right there when you're buying your ticket and you get a view from your seat. You know what it's going to look like before you get there. Absolutely love that. So make sure that you download the Game Time app today, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, let's wrap things up here, previewing the Rays series. The Rays are 28th in home runs, 22nd in batting average, and they have the 7th most strikeouts. It's an offense that's maybe been as bad, if not worse, than the Atlanta Braves all year long. They are 5th in stolen bases, so that is something to keep an eye on as we've gotten ran all over by the Nationals. But the one thing the Rays don't do as good a job of is that's, not striking out. So should be a good matchup for Braves pitchers. And on the pitching side of things for the Rays, they're 25th in ERA. They're 23rd in bullpen ERA. They're 22nd in bullpen K per nine and 21st in bullpen walk per nine. They do have some good relievers out there. Jason Adam, Pete Fairbanks, Garrett Clevenger. They have some good arms coming out of that bullpen as the Rays always do. But as a whole, it's been a bit of a struggle for that group this year. Pitching matchups, Zach Littell versus Chris Sale on Friday. Littell has a 3.63 ERA, a 1.29 whip, 69 strikeouts and 74 in a third innings. On Saturday, it's Ryan Pepio versus Charlie Morton. Morton been struggling up and down here a little bit lately, but hopefully this is a chance for him to get back on track against a struggling offense. Pepio, a 4.17 ERA, but just a 1.01 whip this year and 68 strikeouts and 58 in a third innings. Once a top prospect for the Dodgers, and anytime the Rays trade for a top Dodgers prospect, that gives me some concern, at least if I'm going to be facing that guy. So I think Pepio is going to be a good one, and he has some good stuff. Zach Evelyn versus Hurston Waldrop on Sunday. Waldrop trying to bounce back in his second big league appearance. Zach Eflin just coming off the injured list. He had the 4.06 ERA on the year, but just a 1.15 whip and only 50 strikeouts and 68 and 2/3 innings. So that'll be the pitching matchup. As for who's hot for the Rays, Amed Rosario has a 968 OPS in his last 9 games. Jose Siri has 4 home runs in his last 11 games. And Yandy Diaz, a 306 batting average in his last 12 games. So there's a couple of names for you to watch. And again, it's the Rays are back home where they've hit better this year. It's an opponent that's, bottom 5, bottom 10 in both pitching and offense this year. So it seems like a pretty good matchup for the Braves on paper, but we've seen those a lot here lately, and they haven't been able to get it done. Hopefully they do this weekend. All right, I got one question from the comments section here. Braves Thrills says, is Joe Adell still good? He's hitting under 200 right now. So I don't know that he's the guy you want to be targeting, especially if you're looking for that high on base guy, but certainly somebody with some upside that maybe could benefit from a new scenery, a top prospect who's shown some signs this year, but he wouldn't be my main target at this point. All right, that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Thank you to Zach Cox, Julie C., Jeffrey Humphreys, Little E, Braves Thrills, as I just mentioned, New Turbo, making it with me till the end, Daniel Marrero as well, Floyd Donnelly. Thank you so much for joining me here live. Thank you so much for listening to Locked On Braves. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button as well. Follow us on social media at shortstopball, at LockedOn_Braves, and make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you next time.